Hey everyone, welcome to Voluntary Virtues. My name is Mike Shanklin, and we are here every single Tuesday night, 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. We have a wonderful day today. I know you guys are all excited about Tax Day. Let's give a round of applause for Tax Day. I'm just joking around. Unfortunately, extortion was legitimized to the extreme today, April 15th, as it is every year, unfortunately. And so I'd just like to say to everybody out there, I do sympathize with you for having a lot of your labor unfortunately taken from you against your free will, right? Because if it was actually with your free will, they wouldn't have to have taxes. You would just spend it on the services that are available to you, and hopefully without the taxes, there'd be a lot more industries that are demonopolized, and we'd have a lot more choice. But anyway, I do want to welcome you to Voluntary Virtues, and we are, as always, syndicated on Liberty Movement Radio. So head on over to libertymovementradio.com. Check us out in the chat. And as you guys know, we have a bunch of great new guests coming up tonight. I like it when new guests come on because it always goes into a variety of new discussions that sometimes we might not have had, especially when you don't know exactly what somebody else is thinking or saying. Maybe you haven't watched or talked to them as much as you have other people. So I'm really excited for the guests we have on tonight. And not only that, for those who don't know, we have Robert Kruger, who will always be watching the chat room over on YouTube, and he also tries on libertymovementradio.com as well. So if you guys leave messages or comments over there, we will relay them into the actual live show. So we do thank you for your participation. But anyway, panelists, what is going up tonight? We got Kyron Pearson and Robert Kruger so far. Hopefully Dana will be in the room soon too. How are you guys doing?
Doing great as usual. Great to be here for yet another week of some of this good old voluntarism, some of this libertarianism, and hopefully we can get the message out there to more people.
Yeah.
Doing real well. I do need the YouTube link.
Oh yeah, that might help, huh?
Yeah, you didn't send it over to me.
Yeah, I sent it to like everybody but you, I think, Robert. I'll get that here. Right when I've asked Peter the first question, okay?
Okay.
But yeah, it's really good stuff we got for you guys tonight, and I'm really glad to have both of these two wonderful panelists, really dedicated gentlemen. So they've done a lot for freedom and trying to spread knowledge. So I want to thank them directly here live on air too. A lot of great work from them. As always, you can find a lot of our work over at Statism is Slavery on Facebook. We have almost 200,000 subscribers, the #1 voluntarist Facebook page in the world. There's others that are competing, and kudos to them too. I want to see a lot of these different pages. I wish everybody had a voluntarist page, right? We wouldn't even need them. But the nice thing is that we do have a lot of momentum and a lot of people who are paying attention and getting involved, and it's only growing, and I want to thank everybody for that as well. So, and as always, we have the bumper sticker contest on CIS, so you guys can head over to the Facebook page, facebook.com/statismmakesYouAslave. But anyway, we have a bumper sticker contest at least once a week. We just give away free bumper stickers, usually like 5 different bumper stickers to 5 different people. And also here on the show as well. So leave a comment throughout the night on the live recording, and we'll try and get back to you guys and pick out a couple winners for some free bumper stickers. So let us know. Just to let you guys know, we do have to have some kind of mailing address. Somebody won once, and like, you have to get my address. I was like, well, I got to send the stuff to you, and I guess they probably thought I was a spy or something for the NSA. I don't know. Anyway, they didn't get any bumper stickers because they didn't give me an address, so a little heads up on that. But tonight, I am really excited to start off with Peter Parsley. He is actually an ambassador for the Seasteading Institute, as well as the co-founder and vice president of Young Americans for Liberty at Rollins College. He has a YouTube channel where he provides regular video content at youtube.com/Peter Parsley Official, and that's Parsley. Peter, welcome to Voluntary Virtues. How are you doing tonight?
I'm doing great. Thank you for having me on. I'm really honored to be here as a fan. So this is a cool event for me.
Yeah, well, it's good to have you on the show. And you know, you made a video recently, and you sent it to me, and I ended up posting it on Statism is Slavery. You're doing a lot of work with the Seasteading Institute, and you know, it's got a piece of my heart. And I think it was, what is it, David Friedman's son. Was it Partridge? How do you name it? Isn't he a part of that organization as well?
Yeah, he's really one of the founders, Patrice Friedman. Him and Peter Thiel kind of kicked it off. So, yep, that's him.
Yeah, good stuff. So, you know, it's an organization that does have some backing to it inside the libertarian community, and it's got a piece of my heart too, because basically what I'm hearing, they're selling it as you know, the world as it grows in population. You know, all the land is basically territorialized or geographically monopolized to some government of some type in some region or another, right? And so the one advantage that water and that the ocean and the sea offers people who want freedom is that they have the ability to move outside of one of these government-dominated regions onto a place, and maybe not have freedom forever. Maybe the government will grow for the next 1,000 years. We don't have a crystal ball, right? But the ideal is, at least maybe in the temporary or maybe even in the long term, we will be able to push out governments, and it's going to be harder for them to control this type of property. When they're having to go, I don't know, boat to boat to control it versus just having all the roads that they've violently monopolized, right? So this is one of the beauties of the Seasteading Institute. Before I get too much into that, though, I want to get into you, right? So as people who come onto the show for the very first time, I always like to ask them, before we get into today and what you're thinking right now and what you're doing, where did you really come from? When you were younger, did your parents have like a political party? Were they political or apolitical? Did you go to public school, private school, homeschool, unschool? Were they completely apolitical, not even want you to be a part of the political process? I'm interested to hear the environment of your younger years and how you got to where you are today.
Yeah, my dad had opened a video store, an independent video store, in 1985. A year later, I was born, so when I say I grew up in a video store, I mean that quite literally. I grew up in a video store. So I had the opportunity to see how small business worked from the inside, growing up my entire life. And my parents, they never really injected any sort of politics at all into my upbringing. It really wasn't until, I would say, 2006, when I had the distinct feeling that I didn't feel free anymore. And I didn't know why. And I had these discussions with friends. They would just go to, oh, Bush is the devil. But I wanted specifics. I wanted to know exactly why I didn't feel free like I did growing up. So at that point, I started following politics every single day of my life. I'd get home from school. I'd go on the internet. I'd turn on the TV. And in 2008, I realized we had McCain, Palin, Obama, Biden. I couldn't vote for any of those clowns, so that's when I discovered the Libertarian Party. It seemed like they had written a platform addressed to me, Peter Parsley. This is for you. So I was really excited. That's when I registered Libertarian. 5 years later, I started to feel like minarchy just wasn't the best route. It just didn't seem to address all of the concerns that a truly free society would have. And that's when, you can only read Dr. Robert Murphy's chaos theory so many times, right, until you start to begin thinking differently. And actually, your videos, Mike, played a role in my transition to anarcho-capitalism as well. It was around that time that I realized that the Seasteading Institute was way up my alley, because I had already been interested in it for several years. But honestly, growing up, I didn't really have any sort of political... if you asked me, I would tell you, well, one starts with an R and the other starts with a D. And if you ask me today, I would say, well, one starts with an R and one starts with a D. So I didn't, but now that's me actually having an understanding of the two parties, whereas back then I just didn't even know. But it was really interesting because every single regulation that would come along while we were running the video store, any sort of proposition the government made to try and make things better, we felt it. Now, keep in mind, we just had 10 employees. This is a mom-and-pop store. We are far, far, far away from making $250,000. I mean, not even close. And we would have to deal with all of this. So that, I'm sure, inevitably shaped how I view the market in many ways. But it's good to be here and finally arrive at voluntarism. It happened mid-last year. So making that jump, everybody says it's 6 months, took 5 years for me. So...
Well, the thing is with me, too, it took a while for me as well. And, I think it's going to be quicker and quicker for people into the future, as it's just, some kids are just going to be born into voluntarism, right? You don't even have to transition into it anymore. So, that, like my kid, hopefully, he's just going to be raised understanding reality, right? I mean, that's what I like to call it. But anyway, it's really good to hear. It's interesting. So, when you picked up the Seasteading Institute, did they reach out to you? Did you reach out to them and say, hey, I really like what you guys are doing and I want to be a part of this? I know that you did a video for them. How did that come about?
Yeah, I basically reached out to them and I told them some of the things that I had in mind for how I could advance their message. I had a wonderful recommendation from a professor who's now a friend of mine. He actually is a former Navy SEAL, current hedge fund manager, and is an anarcho-capitalist. So it's really cool, actually. And he's a big fan of seasteading. he kind of encouraged me. We've been working a lot lately. I've been working with him in this whole concept of the art of influence and persuasion. So I kind of pitched this to Seasteading, saying, look, really, we need to get out there as ambassadors and have a way of pitching this that can be appealing to people of all ages, that doesn't just only target one demographic, but we can do that if necessary. So basically, I have these tools in the toolkit. I can use them for you. I want to be of value. I don't want them to go, oh, it's too bad we brought Peter Parsley on board. I wanted it to be the opposite reaction. So they're all really cool people, though. These are definitely the kind of guys you would want to hang out with, and they have a lot of interesting insights. It actually, a lot of them do lean libertarian, but there are some that just don't really have any interest in that. They kind of have a different agenda, but largely it does seem to have a very strong libertarian angle, at least from a lot of the perspective of the guys that I've met.
Yeah, you would think so. This is before we get too much in depth about the actual program. Maybe just describe for the people who haven't heard of it on my show before, what is seasteading? I don't think I've given it a proper definition yet, so go for it.
Well, if you think about it, seasteading is really the concept of homesteading on the sea. And like you said earlier, Mike, we have a planet where over 70% of the Earth's surface is covered with the ocean. So really, we've only made 30% of this to our use. I think 100 years from now or so, 200 years from now, people are going to be looking back and going, what took them so long to get this started? Seasteading, though, basically is the idea of having offshore, autonomous floating cities. A lot of it is going to use off-the-shelf technology, so this isn't some pie-in-the-sky idea that, it sounds good on paper, it might be cool in a movie, but how would it be implemented in real life? All of that has actually been resolved for the most part. It's really just a matter of pooling resources together, finding the right host country, and things of that nature. So it is going to happen.
Well, sorry to interrupt you. I am curious about, you gave a great definition there. I'm curious about how much pressure you're going to receive from other people, because supposedly there's places that are on international waters, right? I guess almost every piece of land has been claimed, but even the water itself, there's some of it that supposedly in what's called international waters. What are you going to have to do? Can you just go out there and homestead it? Is there some restrictions on that? I mean, has anybody tried to stop other people from homesteading stuff that's out in international waters that's not really claimed by any true nation state?
There is an example of a guy who had his own oil rig platform, and that didn't end too well, but I will give you this recent development. We just learned about this in the past month and a half or so. We are currently in diplomatic talks with governments of certain flagship countries. We are not allowed to reveal which ones they are because, in their own words, we don't want to create a media frenzy and disrupt the negotiations, but it is currently underway. It is happening. It looks like it's really, the whole process has been sped up in the past several months. So they're actually going and meeting with the people. I believe there's 32 countries we've outlined that could be a good place to set up shop offshore. Now we have to keep in mind, we're going to have a certain degree of autonomy. So to avoid what you're talking about, Mike, the international waters problem, and but basically once we do this, we will have that autonomy. Because you have to sort of break. You have to break the ice first. So it's anybody's guess. I believe that the first society will probably be that of a libertarian one. Is it going to be a purely voluntarist society? I don't know. That's what we would all want, obviously. Will that be the case? We'll have to see. According to what they want to do is they want to start off one of these cities off of one of these countries. Think the Cayman Islands or somewhere like that, where you're basically going to be completely left alone. You might see the flag, but right, I mean, your degree of autonomy is going to be extremely high. So they're actually in the process right now, though, of making that happen. And I think that it'll happen a lot sooner. It's going to be one of these situations where people are going to turn on the news one day sort of like the NSA, I guess. That's a horrible thing to compare it to. But they're going to turn on the news one day, and everybody's going to be talking about seasteading. They're going to have to talk about it. It'll be part of the national conversation, international conversation for that matter. So it's really coming along quickly.
Yeah, I have a lot more questions for you, but I want to open this up to the panelists real quick. Does anybody want to ask a question to Peter real quick?
Well, back when you were introducing where your history came from, you mentioned that your parents had the video store, and that particular industry has been a victim of the capitalist system of destructive growth. And I was wondering if you could speak to it as far as what you think of that.
Well, I hear your point. The thing is, we closed in 2008, but long before that, actually in the early to mid 2000s, when my father owned the video store, we had all kinds of connections, Video Store Magazine, and we had all these updates. So my dad actually said years before we closed, this industry is a dying industry. It might be doing okay now in 2002, 2003, but in a few years here, it's all going digital. When you read about Netflix starting up, we read about it too, and we kind of saw that it was going to more online content over the years, and it kept growing and growing and growing. So when you're able to anticipate something like that, it doesn't really come as this dramatic blow. I do think it probably felt that way to a lot of the employees, which were our longtime friends, and some of them basically even family. But at the same time, I think they understood after a couple of years, because they all had Netflix accounts and were going to Redbox and whatnot. So I see your point, and I think that that's the nature of things. I would hate for people, obviously in a selfish way, yeah, it would be great for the store to be open and us to be thriving, but I would hate for people to just be stuck with physical media and having to go to the video store in 2014. I think it's a cool outlet. I talk with friends all the time about, hey, do you remember when you could go to the store and you'd browse the 8-bit and 16-bit collection? You could go look at old VHS tapes that are hard to find now, look at through DVDs. You talk to people, you'd run into people at the video store where you could get all kinds of cool conversations and insights, debates, things like that. But it does evolve. It's the same thing as how the mainstream media, it's now going to alternative media. I'm sure they're not so happy about that. But that's just the nature of the free market. I don't think that you can be affected by it on an emotional level to where it's devastating. We had a good run. We had over 20 years, so I think we're all very happy about how it turned out, actually.
Well, that's a great answer. Great answer. The other thing you brought up that I thought was really great was how people who don't know anything about politics at all might have a better understanding than people who do have a small understanding of it. But when they think, well, this one starts with an R, that one starts with a D, is the only difference, they were right.
Right. Exactly.
That's about the only difference. Yeah. Okay. Well, once we actually get to the point of understanding what political ideology really means, coming back to that same understanding that was really quite an impressive thought process. I like that. As far as the seasteading ideas that are going on out there, you said that there are other groups that are interested in it. Is there a particular mindset, like an RBE type of group that is interested in doing something like that, or is it pretty much just maybe more like conservative Republican Christian types, or what are the other groups that you see that are wanting to escape the tyranny that we see in the United States?
Well, I think it's definitely outside of the libertarian circle. It's definitely more inclined to maybe the Venus Project type mindset, resource-based economy type stuff. I know that's kind of like mentioning swear words.
No.
Look, I think that if they eventually want to get their own seasteading and try the Venus Project, prove the naysayers wrong that it doesn't work, as long as they don't infringe upon anybody else's property rights or harm anybody with the threat of violence, I have no problem with that, actually. I mean, I honestly would love to see something like that thrive. Would I join them personally? No, because that's just not my cup of tea. But I would personally rather see an anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist type society. You know, even if they had a libertarian minarchy that's outlined in the Libertarian Party. Now, personally, obviously, I'm a voluntarist, but that would be 1,000 times better than what we're currently under right now. And I think that would be great to see thrive as well. But I actually think that's probably where it's going to start. I don't have any inside information that I'm sharing with you that that's what it's going to start off as, so I'm not giving any sort of exclusive information when I say that. It's just a personal belief that I think it's going to start there. If you look at the people that jump-started the whole thing, they seem to have that mindset. But again, once you unleash seasteading, all of these other societies are going to be made possible. If people who constantly say, well, we haven't had real socialism yet, well, here's your opportunity. Go try it out. Give us the real thing. Tell us how it is. Report back to us. We'll do the same with our startups.
Yep.
Yeah, hey, I think the next question I have here is there a timeline for somebody who is trying to implement this right now that's, within the next 5 years, 10 years? Any kind of timeline that you've seen for something coming about like this?
I had heard different numbers several years ago. I don't know if those numbers still stand because the developments have changed recently, but it looks like in the next 5 to 10 years that we are going to be having we're already having a question about it, but other outlets, maybe CNN, MSNBC, Fox, for instance, they're going to be forced into discussing it because it's going to be a big international development. I think you've already had Glenn Beck talk about it several times. He's had seasteading guys on his show. They've all been surprisingly interested and supportive of it. So if the mindset continues to spread into and outside of the more voluntarist circle, where if it's even getting to the point where conservatives, constitutionalists, and people that are not even identified like that are going, enough's enough, let's find somewhere else where we can actually test out liberty. Because I think our understanding of liberty has evolved quite a bit. And Mike, when you said that people are just going to be naturally become voluntarists, I think you have a point. I mean, here in Central Florida, if you go to libertarian meetups, most of the new members there are all voluntarists. And surprisingly, they came in through Ron Paul. That is not how I arrived. I love Ron Paul, but that's not how I got there. A lot of people came in through Ron Paul and Murray Rothbard. That's what I've noticed over the past couple of years. So they're probably between the ages of 18 and 25, I would say. So there's definitely a big movement towards it. That's on the rise, but liberalism is on the rise too, and not just the typical Democratic Party type liberalism. I think you know what I'm talking about. It's a lot more socialistic than that.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, I want to turn this over to Kyron. Kyron has a question for you. Go ahead, Kyron.
My question is price point. I know for a lot of people who are anarchists, who are libertarians, who are voluntarists, that money is typically an issue. So what is the price point? What is the introductory rate, the baseline model price point that you all are sort of looking at to be able to allow people to come into this? Or is it just going to be, hey, look, this is what we're doing. If you can develop a system that allows people to get in at a certain price point, go for it. But this is what we hope to create. If you can understand my question, I'm sorry.
No, totally. I think a little bit of the latter. And last I had heard, though this may be related to the construction, so I don't want to misrepresent this number. I had heard $500 per square foot. I think that's the construction of seasteading, because I should also announce that they have basically, deltasync has designed the floating city that they want to implement. They are an aquatic engineering firm. So they're taking care of a lot of this right now. I don't know exactly what the price point will be. It could be way up there at first, but it might not. It might actually be pretty reasonable. I think it would probably, in my opinion, I can't speak for seasteading, but I think it's probably going to be in the range of the way people split the cost of a house right now. You could potentially do that with a residential area at seasteading. So there's always ways to get out there and get in the middle of that new frontier.
Yeah, absolutely. I got a question about how many people do you have involved right now who are saying they will buy. They're going to buy right now. If it's zero, no problem. I don't know if it's really hard to get people to concretely buy something 10 years down the road, right? But I'm curious, it's kind of like the Free State Project. They have a sign-up thing, a pledge. They're trying to get 20,000 people to move over there. So I figured you'd have something similar to that. Do you have some kind of a pledge you're making, or what kind of course of action do you guys have for recruitment?
We do. It's currently at 1,000 people right now, because obviously this is a big move for people to make. Actually, I'm sure for a lot of people it sounds kind of scary. What about a tidal wave? Living on the ocean? What kind of protection services are you going to have? However, I'm sure everyone who's on the round table tonight and everyone out there who's watching, we've already discussed that at nausea. We've discussed this to death. So a lot of the 1,000 or so people that have signed up probably understand how that would work, how a free society would function, because they're not going to set up a seasteading and just have it be taken over by pirates by the end of the day. So.
So no, no, good. I completely agree with you, and I think I can see some of the concerns from people out there who would say, especially if you build it too close to another third world country or something like that. I mean, there's obviously threats. There's multiple threats out there. You know what I'm trying to get at. So,
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of the thing, is that the 32 countries that were outlined for the potential flagships there are some of them that we would prefer, obviously. There are others when you look at, you go, well, maybe, to put it lightly. So, yeah, I think that safety is a huge consideration. Nobody wants to get out there and have the whole thing sink, right? Nobody wants to get out there and get knocked over by pirates or terrorists and what have you. I really don't think that's going to happen, though. I think that's so far out from the actual issues. I think what you outlined earlier, Mike, about how will everyone else react to it is probably a bigger concern for me at the moment than the safety questions people have.
Well, so let me ask you, what are some of the biggest detractors say, some of the biggest things that detractors say, people who try to knock on the idea, and how do you usually overcome those objections?
Well, the biggest slang is, oh, Waterworld, right? Because that movie was the big flop from the 90s.
Yeah, I read the book. The book was 10 times better than the movie anyway, so go ahead, sorry.
Oh, was it based off a book? I didn't even know that. That's interesting.
Yeah, it was.
I actually dig the concept of that film, not to get off topic, but that's the slang. Everybody, I mean, anywhere you post about seasteading, a detractor, like you said, will come along and go, oh, yeah, let's get ready for Waterworld, right? Kind of puts an image in people's heads. But that seems to be one of the big things, too. And, of course, you have, a bunch of libertarian paradise, it'll never work. Actually, the detractors have not been very persuasive. I don't think I've been hit with anything or I've read anything that really came across like, oh, wow, they have a point. How am I going to address this? A couple of the attacks I've read have been from environmentalists, but you have to understand, one of seasteading's main points is that it has to be eco-friendly, and they're actually working on, they refer to it as off-the-grid sustainability, and they do want it to, if you have an eco-friendly city, that kind of totally knocks out the, yeah, seasteading's going to pollute the oceans slam. So typically all of that can be, they've combed over this so many times because they want, when this goes into effect, they want to make sure they've dotted the I's and crossed the T's. They don't want to leave anything open for ridicule, to be ridiculed.
Yeah, honestly though, it just seems that some government would try to claim anything that you build and be like, well, it was the closest to us, so it's part of us, right? I guess we don't know how the response is going to be in 100 years or even 10 years down the road, but there's going to probably, like today, be a lot of people who are like, well, they should have their private property, and there's going to be a bunch of people who are saying, well, that should be public property, right? How can they own the world or something like that, right? Even though they want the government to own the world, right? So it's just kind of like hypocritical, but I am curious, is one of the biggest threats governments or natural disasters? Out of the two, it just seemed like governments to me would be a bigger problem because you can overcome almost any of the natural disasters that might happen to you, but especially since it's floating, unless it's anchored somewhere, I guess. I don't know. I'm trying to wrap my head around the whole idea. So yeah. It just seems that to me one of the biggest dangers I would see, and maybe one problem you might have with investors is people who say, well, I'd like to invest in this thing, but it's kind of like market uncertainty. How do I know? How do I know that it's going to be, not to be taken over by governments down the road or try to claim it? I guess in the short term it is safer. I don't know. What do you guys feel about that? Robert, Kyron, I'm trying to get any concerns or objections out of the way for this because I would like to start advancing seasteading. It's basically just property rights outside of land, right? So I mean, it is voluntarism, but the whole thing is, I'd like to overcome any objections that we might have tonight on the radio show before we let you go. So I guess there really aren't any good objections that I've heard. So yeah, you've done a great job, Peter. Robert and Kyron, do you guys have any questions?
Yeah, one of my sort of go-to things that I look at as far as what liberty is and how to be free is earthships. I'm a huge fan of earthships. They collect their own rainwater, treat their own sewage, grow their own food. They're heated and cooled by solar because of their design by the sun. I'm curious. I've noticed what Michael Reynolds has done with earthships and how he has copyrighted the name so that you can't build an earthship and call it an earthship unless he basically, or the earthship biosector has given you permission to do so. And so my question is has seasteading done the same thing? Is there going to be sort of checks and balances on who can call what they're doing seasteading to prevent sort of like, people coming in and doing shoddy work and doing, shoddy construction and building things that sink and are disastrous and maybe lives get lost and the Seasteading Institute gets, sort of blamed for it all?
Yeah, I think the way that they're going to rectify that is by just having their full name, the Seasteading Institute, attached to whatever they're involved with. Because seasteading is really just a general term. So if somebody wants to go out and attempt their own version of seasteading, it can be done without, if it's not done through the Seasteading Institute, that would fall on that group's hands. So they would be removed from what the Seasteading Institute is doing. Right now there is, I believe it's called Blue Seed. It's where they want to get the cruise ship up and running. I believe it was started by a couple of former Seasteading Institute members, rather. So there are some other ideas that this is spawning, and I actually, now obviously I don't want shoddy construction jobs like you mentioned, but I do hope this does spawn off new groups and new people willing to try seasteading, pooling their resources and making this materialize sooner rather than later, so we can see more of this happen. Because really the idea is to have competing societies, competing structures that we can set up and see which works best and give people more options than the current monopoly we have that the governments today hold. But yeah, I see your point. I think that as long as it's removed from actually what the Seasteading Institute itself is involved with, we wouldn't really have to worry about that.
Realistically, the way that that's addressed is if they put the Seasteading Institute's logo on there and say that it's one of their works, and they're actually not, anybody who would buy into their product and was dissatisfied would have a claim of fraud against them. So, that's how you would handle that.
Yeah, absolutely, and all that would be well documented too. If there was a floating city off some random coast and they threw up a Seasteading logo, that would be pretty easy to prove that that was fraudulent behavior.
Yeah.
So what do you think the arbitration services are going to look like on one of these newer islands? You would think, I agree with you, that the first one will probably be something more libertarian based and voluntarist, and I do mean voluntarist libertarian. So in that regards, you would think that they would hire some sort of or maybe they hire sounds a little bit too collectivist. That the individuals there would be able to come to their own form of arbitration. You would just think, for as far as like specialization and division of labor goes, you'd have to make a city that's large enough to actually host at least 100 people or so. You would think, right? So you could be self-sustained. I guess you could do it by yourself. It would just be easier with division of labor and specialization as long as everybody respected each other's property rights, and before they came into the area or onto the island, they had to agree to abide by property rights or something like that, right? So I guess my question is, though, do you guys have like a specific number you are, like that's too much, too many people for a city, too little for a city? Is there like some kind of a equilibrium, or like a perfect hit it out of the park, home run type number for you guys that you're looking for to make these cities?
Yes, the first city is going to have a total number of 250 residents. That's the first one. Remember, we're just going in and trying to break the monopoly. So from there, it's anybody's guess. You could potentially have seasteadings that house thousands of people. We don't know yet. The interesting thing about seasteading is it's tapping into infinite possibility. There's no telling where it's going to go. And I personally, I like the idea of dispute resolution organizations. So maybe we'll see something like that show up. I think that would be something that sounds like the best solution to some of these issues.
No, I agree with you. I really do. That's why I had to ask that question, to try and get some kind of a quantifiable number.
Yeah.
Because if we're going to make this realistic, we're going to spread this to other people and try to make this a reality. And I would love to see this work. You know what I'm saying? More than TZM. I just think that we have to address all these questions, and that's what I'm trying to do on the show. And hopefully, people can use this as a point of reference for other Seasteading Institute information. But I do want to allow the panelists to ask one last question before we let you go, Peter. I do appreciate your time on the show. So, Robert and Kyron, do you guys have any more questions for Peter tonight?
I was wondering, as far as the types of industries that you're going to find available, or which industries would be viable for such a location. It seems like having a ranch doesn't really work very well for a seasteading type of thing. But if you I don't know, if you were to use hydroponics, maybe you could use that for growing crops. Is that what are we looking at as potential businesses that could work in that environment?
Sure. There's a lot of buzz in Silicon Valley right now about how much programmers, software developers are hungry for a solution, as I'll call it, like seasteading. They want to be able to function in a deregulated environment. They want to be able to create all of their own startups and not have to worry about all of the rules, regulations, tax codes. And they want to compete freely. They don't want to have another corporation come along that has special grants from the states, such as tariffs, patents. The list goes on with how much they are granted these special privileges that no longer create a free market. So there's a lot of guys like that. I personally have been told that there are a lot of hedge fund managers who have a real libertarian streak and are very interested in seasteading. I mean, you could put a face to that if you want to. Peter Thiel, right? He was one of the big funders and guys who helped start up Seasteading Institute. So there's there are certain industry. It would look probably. Again, it is anybody's guess. Let's be honest here, but there has been a lot of rumblings from those communities of expressing interest in seasteading.
So realistically, though, your guess is that they're going to be kind of like Hong Kong, where a large percentage of their stuff is imported, and the things that you're going to see produced there will tend to be not very bulky.
Perhaps, yeah. I mean, if we're talking about software development, financial institutions, and things like that, perhaps. I think that that's probably what we're likely to see at first. But then again, there's so much possibility. I could be way off. That could be something that comes in the future. That's one of the things that people want to unlock. Is there is a high degree of uncertainty, but that uncertainty is thrilling to a lot of people. In the same way that the free market is attractive to many people.
Well, I could see it being, possible that one of the first investors in it might be wanting to do a hydroponics poppies and marijuana, and have that be one of their exports. Then you're looking at some potential issues from other governments, governments out there going, "You can't do that. What are you doing over there? You can't make that kind of plant grow." So,
that's true. Yeah. What the question is, what if growers move out to seasteading and start trying to export it to California or places with medicinal marijuana or illegal marijuana? That might be what they try to do. I'm sure if there was illegal exportation, they would probably let them know, hey, we have to be careful, because I'm sure that the seasteading project wants to avoid as much foreign intervention as possible. So anything like that may happen, which they don't find attractive, I'm sure that would be addressed privately.
I have a question. So again, back to sort of earthships and sort of as my baseline for creating community. I know that they have sort of these tenets of what that building technically has in order to be called an earthship. Like, it has to collect its own rainwater. It has to be heated, by the sun and cooled by the sun. It has to be made of tires. It has not necessarily made of tires. It has to collect its own rainwater, treat its own sewage, and all these other things, grow its own food, etc. Are there sort of these benchmarks for what seasteading, in order to have a community called seasteading, to be associated with the Seasteading Institute, will there be these benchmarks, and if so, what are they?
They really want to be able to grow their own food. So that's one thing that they've outlined in various reports, where they'll be able to actually use the ocean. They'll be able to fish and things of that nature to make this a possibility. When you talk about environmental sustainability, that comes with its own package of requirements, things that they have to abide by. So I do believe they have a lot of them. I have not memorized all of those reports, recommendations. Obviously I'm not an engineer, so I can't get into the finer details of how that might work. But to answer your question, yes, there are things of that nature which they basically see as a requirement to have on a floating city.
Do you know what they are, or where we can find that information as far as that's concerned?
Yes, that is all available publicly at seasteading.org. You can actually download PDF files of all these reports. Some of them have been written up as suggestions. Some of them are going to be implemented. It's a lot to go through, but it's a lot of fun if you're interested in this subject to just sit there one night like I have and just read through them all. You could print them out and just have a whole seasteading Bible, if you will, on things that are going to happen or things that are likely to be put into practice. It's pretty exciting. I mean, they have really combed over all the fine details, whether it's the legal issues, international issues, the living off the the ocean, things like that. It's all there. Most of it is, anyways. And that can all be found on seasteading.org.
Yeah, good stuff. You know, I really do have a lot of optimism for seasteading. Like I said before, it's just property rights being extended into the ocean, right? I mean, it's really simple. And right now, it's kind of like the ocean is the American plains pre-1400s, right? So in other words, you have this frontier that really hasn't been tapped into. That's just waiting. It's just waiting. People will say space is the last frontier. Well, we still have another frontier to get to before we get to space, and that's the ocean, right? So, you know, I'd like to see all of it done. Don't get me wrong. I'd like to see us tackle all the technological challenges we face and have a better life for everybody, no matter where they want to live, right? Even underneath the water or on the moon. But I do think seasteading is a much more plausible next step for, you know, the pushing property rights forward. So this is why I wanted to have Peter on the show tonight to talk about the Seasteading Institute. And, you know, Peter, I do want you to give out some plugs for the site real quick, but I also want to ask you, I ask everybody this question right before I let them go. It's, if you were on your deathbed and everybody came running up to you, Fox News, ABC, MSNBC, Mike Shanklin, Voluntary Virtues, we have microphones thrown in your face, and you have like 1 or 2 minutes to say something to the entire world, and everybody would hear you just for 1 or 2 minutes, what would you say to everybody?
Follow your heart, develop your own knowledge, question authority, find what makes you happy, treat others with love and respect. Revenge works great in a film, but in real life it usually doesn't pan out so well. So live your life the way you want to live. Never live it for somebody else. Care about your friends, your family, and understand the importance of liberty, because as much as it might seem like a new idea, it's not. It's an old idea. The reason it might seem like a new idea is because so much of our liberty that it feels new, but it's really not. And I hope that if I were on my deathbed in that situation, that I could have set a good example for others, and that I didn't violate my own principles in the process.
Hey,
I hope that's a cool answer. I don't.
I think it's a heartfelt, passionate, and factual response. So I do thank you for that, Peter. Now I'm going to try to have you back on for an update within the next 3 to 6 months. How does that sound?
That would be great. I absolutely thank you so much for having me on. It's really an honor to be here and talk with all of you guys and kind of spread the word and just talk about these ideas in general. Not only is it a fun thing, I think that this is a way to wake people up to new ideas that if you're dissatisfied with doing things through the government, hoping that that will bring you more freedom, there's another route you can take.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, Peter, thank you once again for being on the show. We're going to have you back real soon, and so have a great night, and thanks once again. Keep up the great work with the Seasteading Institute, and next time we'll even talk about Students for Liberty, okay?
Great, yeah, you too, and I love everything you all do, and keep up the good fight.
All right, thanks, buddy. Bye-bye.
See ya.
Good stuff, guys. You know, Peter really... you can tell he's very mature and that he's got a lot of passion for voluntarism and freedom. And I do think he is onto something here with seasteading. I think it is a futuristic, you know, I guess computers, you know, 100 years ago seemed futuristic, and today everybody has one, right? So as the population grows, it's inevitable, in my opinion, even if we do have some kind of a Malthusian chaos, you know, theory, like Kyron, I'm sure will bring up. But even then, I think, you know, the population is going to continue to grow for quite some time, right? And we're gonna see people just sick and tired of living on land, just that alone. Some of the people who are living on land sick and tired of the governments living around them, and some people that just want to live on the ocean in general. So I think there's going to be a big push towards that over the next 100 years, and I think that these people really are at the cutting edge, the front edge of this, and I think there's also a lot of money in this too from just an investment perspective. I'm not saying it's not risky, but I'm saying obviously there's a lot of future investment that will pay off, I think, in this industry down the road. So who knows, though? Who knows? But I think seasteading is going to be something that's going to happen it's going to occur much more often in my lifetime as I grow older. So I want to hear your guys' opinions on this, and, you know, constructive criticism for Peter, whether you liked him, or you might disagree with seasteading. If you do, go ahead, panelists.
Well, I think that it does kind of bring up the question about any closed system, and it's not necessarily a closed system, but if it may actually be somewhat of a closed system as far as the amount of processing that can go through for waste. If you got a limitation on the amount of sewage that can be handled, then having children kind of becomes an interesting burden that you're adding to your environment. And I know that there are a lot of people who claim that the Earth is at that point where we have a overpopulation problem. They're completely nuts, but as far as in that type of an environment, though, that certainly could be a case. I mean, I would imagine you would have to have a contract where you would state, all right, well, if I have another child, then I'm going to be paying additional funds or whatever. I don't know. It's an interesting issue to handle. As far as other concerns, if you have activities that are being done by businesses in your seastead that put you at risk with other entities, let's say a group uses it as a laundering for money type of thing for Al-Qaeda, for example, well then by being on that seastead, they're putting the rest of you at risk for having an invasion from some military power. If you
By
have
Al-Qaeda, you mean the U.S. government, right?
Yeah, well, I don't know. Maybe if they're off the coast of somewhere in Saudi Arabia, or if they're in the Middle East, if that's where the seastead is, maybe that it'll be one of the countries in that region that would take action. I don't know. If you're off the coast of Japan and you start making opium and selling it to people in Japan, maybe Japan would have some. They have a small navy, don't they? So I don't know. It's just there are some concerns that you have to do when you're basically all living in the same structure.
Well, when I thought about when you were just mentioning sort of the sewage issue, I know that the fish farms off the coast of like Nova Scotia and Norway, they have a huge issue with sewage coming off of these fish farms, and no doubt that it's going to be an issue for human beings as well. But there are ways for us to treat our sewage that we know of, and to process that effluent that comes off of our sewage and use it to grow food.
But is there a capacity for that? I mean, does it have like a maximum capacity, or can it be scaled to any size?
I'm sure it can be. And then, if you look at what Earthships are doing, they have these things called blackwater botanical cells. So basically, your sewage goes out to the septic tank, and then the effluent from the sewage goes into a botanical cell, which is basically a pond liner line ditch in which you've put in all of these trees or fruiting plants, and it grows food from your sewage. There's actually a guy named Toby Hemingway who talks about how permaculture can save humanity, and in it he shows this project that he worked on in Eleuthera, Bahamas, in which they didn't have room to even plant a septic system, and so they have the sewage running straight through outside botanical cell, and it grows all of these amazing plants, and basically they could grow food and fruit trees off of the waste product of human beings. And then also too, you're going to be out there in the ocean. So there's going to be plenty of sunlight involved, and you can use magnifying glasses to what do they call them? The huge magnifying glasses to basically to zap the feces if you want, and make it into powder in a matter of seconds. I mean, there's going to be all of these emerging technologies to come out that'll be able to handle human feces and maybe even one day generate a landmass out in the middle of the ocean based on that human feces being dropped in. I mean, there's islands in off the coast of I forget what country, I believe England, which are made completely out of bird feces. So I mean, it's wholly possible that that this can happen as far as how human feces is processed in a responsible way. I don't think we're gonna have to. You would have to pay more to have more children on these spaces. And I absolutely thought you saying that people who believe overpopulation is they're basically nuts. They are. I mean, how is it that we're overpopulated and our population on this planet is still growing? That doesn't make sense. And it's been growing at an exponential clip for since the industrial age. I was just down in Maryland, and I went to this place called Y Island. And there was nothing but space out there. And I'm looking around, just fields and fields that I could see from this road, and as far as I could see through the trees, it was just space. And I'm looking at, and I'm like, how is it that we're being told that the world is overpopulated? But back to seasteading. I think that somehow the cargo containers. I'm a huge fan of building homes with shipping containers. And so I see these huge liners, these freight liners going through with, 11 high, 22 wide of shipping, 40-foot shipping containers. And I've seen where people make, basically studio units. You could probably make a 2-level, 3-level house out of shipping containers and even change, so let's say you have one of those freight liners and you basically have the shipping containers decked out so that they're studio units or they're the houses, and you stack them up, and behind you you're hauling sort of the waste botanical cells that are processing your sewage and growing your food, and you have your community on one of these freight liners. I mean, they go back and forth throughout the ocean through storms and everything else. So I think it's wholly possible to and they run on diesel fuel, and so you can make diesel fuel from algae, which grows in the ocean.
Well, I don't think that that you can have a completely sustainable ship, self-sustainable. But I could see if you had a large enough, kind of like an oil derrick, but a large stationary type of thing, I could see that maybe doing it. The problem with moving vessels is that if you're you're going to be changing the dynamics for your plants. They're getting either too much sunlight or the temperature is changing such that they can't acclimate, because plants are not necessarily well designed to be in really cold environments or really hot environments. They're not designed to be able to do in both. At least most plants. I suppose that there might be some that are really diverse in their abilities, but moving around all the time when you're trying to grow.
I think
you broke up. You're breaking.
Right. I think I think most. Okay. Hello.
Yeah.
Turn off my camera. Am I still breaking up?
No, you're good.
Okay. So I think that you're right about sort of the range in which many plants can survive, and I think that with seasteading, there's going to be an optimum zone in which people are going to seastead in, and I think it's going to be in the tropics personally. Why mess with places in which you're going to have to worry about those extremes in temperatures? They're going to find spots out in the ocean where the temperature doesn't range very much. It's going to be like San Francisco or sort of NorCal area in which it's always 75 and the low is like 45, or even like places like Hawaii where it's always just 86 degrees like all day every day, basically at night as well. So I think they're going to find these sort of sweet spots in the ocean and and live there. and seastead there. So I don't think there's going to be much movement as far as like going from zone to zone. And there could be, if they would like to, there could be sort of seasteads that travel around sort of like a semester at sea, and go from port to port.
Well, as far as the sweet spots, definitely I could see that happening, but the moving around thing, if you're going to have plants growing, you're gonna need to like be traveling within the same I don't know, the same latitude. You'd probably want to be in about the same latitude, and then, but also you wouldn't want to go too fast, because if you, let's say, I don't know how well a plant's going to respond if it has a 35-hour day of the same amount of sunlight for the entire 35 hours.
Well, plants in Alaska deal absolutely fine with it. When they plant stuff, food crops in Alaska, they get sunlight for what, 2 months, 3 months straight, and the crops do absolutely fine. There's no problem. The plants will take what they need from their environment and grow accordingly. One thing that may be an issue as well is salt water jumping into these growing containers, or these growing mediums. And again, there's plants that human beings can grow that are saltwater tolerant, that will process your waste and also give you a lot of the things that you would need. Maybe like mangroves, maybe like Saliconia, I believe, is a plant that it doesn't grow very tall, but it has these seeds. You can make it into vegetable oil. You can take the protein from the seed and use the protein as a protein supplement. There's so many things out there that we know, and you can grow oyster mushrooms in the ocean.
Yeah.
Paul Stamets took these inoculated long tubes and threw them in an oil spill in the ocean. The oyster mushrooms ate the oil, grew mushrooms that were non-toxic because they can process, carbons and hydrocarbons, because they have enzymes to do so. And, they grew mushrooms out. And you could take the mushrooms, which are high in protein, and other, I wouldn't call them phytonutrients, but chemicals that our bodies need as well, that help us to fight off illnesses, bacterial illnesses, fungal illnesses, viral illnesses, etc. And so, there's a multiplicity. Like, I'm not worried about sort of this quote unquote sustainable, is it going to be sustainable thing that people talk about. I know that the answer to all of humanity's problems can be solved in a garden, and can be solved by nature. Well, that's why.
I know exactly the perfect solution that's going to solve all the problems there. All we need is just to use some science and genetically modified organisms.
I mean, I don't necessarily agree with the genetically modified organisms. Definitely some science, couldn't hurt. But I'm not one to say that there's a all-in solution other than what already is working. Nature has worked for the last 4 billion years. And it's going to.
I'm just saying that I was saying that to push buttons. That's all.
Oh, with whom?
With anyone that was might view our our show, because a lot of people who are in the liberation movement, the liberty movement, are anti-GMO, and so I thought I'd just give them a little
prod.
Well, guys, thanks for holding the show over for me. Unfortunately, I don't know what's going on with Marco's equipment, but we do have Michael Pickens joining us here in just a second. Hopefully we can get Marco on next week. I have Dr. Walter Block on next week, and I forget who the second guest is. I'll have to go look that up, but I'll do that before the show's over. But I really wanted to get Marco on here so we could talk, because I know he was, he's I don't know if he's a minarchist or voluntarist or TZM or whatever, but I wanted to get his perspective and just have a discussion. I don't want just voluntarists on the show, right? I mean, the point is not to have, the point is to talk about voluntarism, but I don't want to just limit it to just those types of people. That's why I try and invite people onto the show that have a variety of different opinions. And I'm not saying Marco's different than us. I'm just saying that I really don't know where he stands, and hopefully we can have him on next week to try and talk about this, and we won't have these issues with Google Hangouts like we just did. And I do want to thank once again Peter Parsley, great guest we just had on from the Seasteading Institute, and I do wish them and that organization the best of luck moving forward. But let's turn over to the next edition over here at voluntaryvirtues.com, which I do got to remind you guys about the Walter Block thing before I get too deep into that. Walter Block will not be here on Tuesday. He had to reschedule to Monday because of some other appointment that he had on that Tuesday. So we're going to be having the recording on Monday and still do an hour-long show on Tuesday night next week as well with our other guests. And hopefully we can have Marco on. We can even extend it a little bit later than an hour. But I'll then, on Wednesday, throw all of the videos together for Monday, Tuesday, put the intros, endings, ads, all that good stuff in there, and release it on Wednesday. So just a heads up for everybody for next week. But let's move on for the rest of the show tonight. We have Michael Pickens. C. Michael Pickens is the author of the book Libertarian Leadership, and is also the executive director of the Libertarian Party of Washington. Pickens leads up an action committee that diligently works to abolish legislation that is designed to hinder the growth and innovation of Americans, as well as educating citizens on how a truly free society should operate. Hey, my kind of guy. I give speeches like that too, Pickens. Welcome to Voluntary Virtues. How are you doing tonight?
Doing fantastic. Can you hear me?
Yeah, we can hear you, and good to have you on the show. I'm really excited to have you on here. You know, I think is this the first time you've ever actually been on Voluntary Virtues?
Yes, it is.
Well, it's good. Finally, it's about time, man. Yeah. Well, you know, I only have one show a week, buddy, so I'm trying to get as many people on here as possible, and it is good to have you on the show to go over the different ideals of libertarianism itself and in general. But as you know, for the very first time people come on my show, I like to ask them the question, you know, how did you get to where you are today? I'm talking about, let's go way back to your childhood even. Were your parents political or apolitical? Did they have like a certain political party? Were you homeschooled, private schooled, public schooled, unschooled? You know, take us to the steps of your environment as younger years, and then how you got to where you are right now.
So I grew up in a social conservative household. My dad would listen to a lot of Republican talk radio, social conservative talk radio, and it just never fit with me. Also, went to government-run education, and I was somewhat of a rebel. You know, I just didn't fit into the mold. So then 2007 came around, Ron Paul campaign. I was watching a Fox News debate, actually with my dad, and you know, he was up there on stage talking about how the terrorists don't hate us because we're free and prosperous. They hate us because we've been over there bombing them since 1953 and meddling in their business. So that's what started my path into libertarianism. I hadn't heard of it before until then. Can you hear me?
Yeah, that pesky mute button of mine. Sorry. No, it's good stuff. So it seems like you had, you know, an environment in which it was sort of active in thinking outside of, you know, or looking into something that was more outside, yeah, I guess political realm or philosophical. So some people have nothing like that whatsoever. Like their parents were completely apolitical, and so it's always interesting to see where people come from in the environment that they got to. So who do you think are some of the major influences in your life that have brought you, to this mindset? There's got to be at least 4 or 5, top influencers in your life that have had an effect on you.
Yeah, you know, there was one major event in my life that really set me on this path. When I was about 15 years old, my dad came home from work and he caught me smoking pot and he called the police. So I actually got arrested and had to go through drug diversion, and I just thought it was the most ridiculous thing ever because I'd never hurt anyone. I did nothing to anyone else. So yeah. That's what got me on this path. Not to mention that my brother has had some drug issues as well, where he didn't hurt anyone, but he got a felony, and he's okay with me talking about it because he's an active libertarian as well. But you just look at some of the ridiculous laws that are in place and the injustice that's going on, and I just have to do something. That's what really got me active.
Yeah, hey, that was a really in-depth story right there. I do appreciate you sharing that with us on VB. But I got to ask you, how has that turned out now? Is your dad regretted making that decision years ago? How long ago was it? And what do you think has come? What kind of harm has come out of it for you guys? Obviously, some type of criminal record, or you were underage, I guess, at the time, so maybe it was just on your minor record, or can you expand on that a little bit?
Yeah, there weren't any serious implications as far as the criminal record. But no, I haven't spoken with my dad in a few years. He hasn't changed his mindset. My mom has tremendously. She voted for Gary Johnson in 2012, and they're divorced now. But that was 15 years ago. But I just see that these people with closed minds out there, like, oh, drugs are bad, drugs will ruin your life, so we're going to lock you in a cage and ruin your life. Like, there's just no freaking common sense. And we've got to we have to go out and educate people. And that's why I love what I do, because we're focused on taking action. We actually go out. Yesterday I was at a booth at the Spokane Community College, local community college here. We got 60 signatures for one of our candidates talking about libertarianism. And the thing is, most people have never even heard of the word libertarian at all. Most people can't even define the word liberty. And that's one thing that we're focused on doing, is educating people on, what we believe morals are.
Yeah, hey, fair enough. I do want to open this up to the panelists. I want to ask one more question that might lead us into some good discussion. You seem to take the political route, and hey, more power to you on your own personal strategy and choice. I kind of take the outside the political route. Just different flavors and strategies, whatever. I believe in my path. You believe in your path, and hopefully we lead to the same place. But what I'm trying to get at here is, why is it that you chose the political path instead of the apolitical path? You knew we were going to have this kind of discussion sometime tonight, right? Let's get it out of the way.
Most definitely, yeah. So there's, a lot of libertarians who are working to create a voluntary society outside of the political structure, and they believe that, voting is just, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, voting is just you're giving your consent to the system, correct? To a corrupt system. And the reason why I chose to advance what we're doing, advance libertarianism through the political system place right now, is because we get a soapbox. I get media interviews, right? I get invited to go to the community college and set up a booth, representing the Libertarian Party. And there's a lot of people out there who believe we can change the system through the structure that's created right now, and it gives them motivation to go out and knock on doors, because we have candidates on the ballot. Sunday we spent all day knocking on doors around Spokane, educating people on libertarianism, and handing out, information on what a free society actually means, So that's why we chose this path.
No, fair enough. I am curious to how welcoming you have found the Libertarian Party, because back in the day when I was really heavy in the party, I was actually the political director for North Carolina. I'm sure, I know you already know that, but yeah, we've known each other for a while now. But back in the day, it was really harsh, especially the early years of me being in the LP. That they were really harsh towards voluntarists and anarchists. Some of them, I know there's that large divide, and then Bob Barr came in and all that stuff, and went down the route. But I guess, yeah, yeah, that's a whole other show, right? But yeah, I'm curious to how welcoming the party is to people who actively call themselves anarchists. And what do you think about Adam Kokesh's supposed run in 2020 when he's 35 plus years old?
Okay, so there's a couple different questions there.
Right.
We're a very welcoming party up here in Washington, and it's one of the reasons why I chose Washington State. We're all about growing the movement, and I hate to say it, but being a big tent, but also being principled at the same time, right? I didn't get to where I am today overnight. I had to do some reading, I had to do some research, I had to read some Rothbard. There's steps to go along the path in this journey, and we have to be accept people into our party, but also at the same time educate them as well, and not having to compromise our principles in the process. So it's I don't know, tightrope that we're walking on, but it has to be done. So
Now, as far as Adam Koch's run, I love the guy, man. I remember going out to D.C. and meeting him. I love what he's doing, and it's going to bring some attention to voluntarism, and that's a good thing.
Could you bring your mic a little closer to your mouth, or turn up the volume on your mic there? It's
Yeah, is that better?
Yeah, much better, much better.
Awesome.
Oh yeah, that makes a whole world of difference. Actually, go ahead, Robert. With that great insight and and recommendation, I'll let you go with the next question.
Well, first of all, it's Washington State, not D.C., right?
Yeah, Washington State.
Yeah. All right. So, as far as the politics in Washington, you're finding that recently there's been a lot of activity where you've got a socialist actually in office, right?
Yeah, Sama Showan, I think that's how you pronounce her name.
Yeah.
She's a socialist city council member who's been elected.
Oh, your mic went down again.
All right, can you hear me?
Yeah, that's better. All right, cool. So, what's her name again?
Sama Showan.
Yeah.
And we just had our state representative candidate, Chris Kelly, in the 34th district debate.
Okay, it's not the mic being in the position. It's something else. There's something that the wire or something is coming loose, or I don't know.
It might be short in his wire.
Yeah.
Well, it's like it only happens when he starts talking continuously, and then it starts to fade. Maybe turn down the volume just a tad bit. I don't know. That's weird.
Okay, is that better?
Well, it's good for now.
Okay.
But she recently passed some measures like the minimum wage there, or living wage, or whatever they call it. Isn't that right?
No, she's pushing for a $15 minimum wage. However, the city of SeaTac just implemented that. It was on the ballot. It was voted in.
Yeah. That's
we have to turn the volume back down. It was better beforehand, actually.
Yeah, I don't know. It's odd. Something's going weird with it. It's like after 2 seconds of talking, it goes really quiet.
Yeah, it starts to fade after you talk for a while. All right, now that you turned it back to the original level you had it at, hopefully it works again. So go ahead.
Okay.
What were we going to say, Michael? Go ahead.
So in 2012, we had no libertarians on the ballot running for state office here in Washington. Now we have over 20.
Shit. Yeah, you might want to move the mic. I don't know what happened. I don't know what. Did you change a setting on the microphone to a different microphone? It sounds different. I don't know. Maybe you should just take off the headset. Maybe you should just take off the headset and or just change the microphone to the computer or the laptop if you have a chance. Maybe that'll work better. I'm not sure what's going on. It's like you start talking, and then I can edit this out. But you start talking, and then like a minute or two later, it just starts, or a few seconds later, it starts cutting out. Just the volume turns into hardly anything. Try and get it just like you had when you came onto the show originally.
Can't hear you at all.
Okay, what about now?
Yes, for now. Let's see if it drains back out. So go ahead and say what you're going to say.
Okay, so with the top two election law that we have here in Washington State, top two primary, there can never be a spoiler. Only the top two vote getters from the primary move on to the general election. So we can break through from that, what the media labels libertarians. Anytime we're brought up in an article on the news is that the libertarian can play a spoiler and help get the Democrat elected, by pulling votes for the Republican. Well, here in Washington, we don't have that. We just have to fight in the primary versus the general. The advantage to that is that about half the people come out to vote in the primary than do in the general, so it's a much smaller voting base.
Does that satisfy your comment?
Yeah, it's a the state that he's in is as far as I can tell not as libertarian as some other states.
Yeah, you can say that again.
Yeah,
yeah, I know. Hey, they passed marijuana in Seattle, right? Supposedly, with taxes and regulations and the rest of it.
Well, this is the thing. I actually think it's a very libertarian state, and I'm finding that out. In 2012, they pseudo-legalized marijuana, right?
they legalized gay marriage in referendum 74, and at the same time, the voters voted in an initiative to where the state legislature needs a 3/4 majority to raise taxes. These are the voters who voted this stuff in. So,
Interesting.
Washington State's very ripe for libertarianism and the Libertarian Party.
Hey, I don't want to steal your optimism. I just, it just Washington State. When you look at its political representatives, they are pretty extremist on the liberals. Like, what I mean is modern liberal, not classical liberal. You know what I mean by that. So, what I found is most of the representatives in the Democrat Party in Seattle or in the state of Washington seem to be pretty extremists. I don't know. I guess every political person seems extremist to me.
Yeah.
So I guess that's what it usually comes down to in the end, anyway. So when we're looking, I don't want to stop Kyron. Kyron, if you have any questions, please pop in and ask a question. But for now, I do have more questions for you. I'm wondering, when you talk to people, how do you usually talk to them about taxation? Do you take? Obviously, you have a position with the Libertarian Party. Are you allowed to say things like taxation is theft? Do they try to stop you from saying that? I'm trying to see what kind of positions they try to encourage or stop from your perspective.
Yeah, no one, even though I'm the executive director, no one controls me. No one. I won't let anyone try to mitigate anything that I say or anything that I do. Because I believe that the Libertarian Party should be ran like our philosophy. We shouldn't be discouraging any type of activism whatsoever. And now, as far as taxation being theft, yes, I can say taxation is theft.
Man, that's good. That's great to hear. I'm loving it.
And I just posted that on our state party Facebook page as the Libertarian Party of Washington. So.
Since you do, you might get some more attention from the parties than anarchists who are outside of it. We might reflect more to the individual level. Some person who's outside of politics, and we might strike them as more attractive to listen to freedom. But for you probably get a few more ears from Democrats and Republicans. And I'm curious as to what kind of blowback, if we're going to call it that your statements have had. If they say do they call you extremists? What kind of have they even given you much attention in the first place? And if so, what kind of feedback are you seeing from them? Are they trying to attack you at? What are they trying to attack?
Okay, so from the major political parties, we haven't really gotten any attention. They kind of treat us with a mild neglect, right? But that's because we haven't ran candidates in the past, and now things are going to change, considering we're raising funds and we've got 20 plus candidates that are going to be on the ballot come filing week in a month. So they're going to start paying more attention to what we're doing. But a couple of candidates that have gotten media attention right now, Chris Kelly out in the 34th District, he was featured on a local TV station, Homo News, because of his debate against the Social City Council member. They did a good feature on him. And then Stephen Nielsen, who's challenging the Republican House Minority Leader here in the state, is getting some good media attention as well. He's been featured 3 times in a local newspaper in his district for challenging J.T. Wilcox on his corruption and cronyism. So everything so far has been pretty good.
Yeah, well, I'm curious. Let's take this. I want to take this kind of philosophically tonight, and just talk. Maybe we could spread some knowledge about the ideas of freedom itself. So, as far as the libertarian platform calls, it calls to continually minimize government, right? And I don't think it says we stop. It doesn't say stop at 10% or stop at 5%. It just says minimize it. Keep minimizing it. If you have government, keep minimizing it. So let's say we minimize it all the way to the point where we even have the police sector that is now, if we're going to call it, truly privately ran, so no taxes, no subsidies, true choice in police services. Do you see that as a viable option or even plausible within the next 100 or 1,000 years?
Man, that's going to take a big shift in the mentality of the citizenry for that to happen. Huge shift. But people are waking up to the fact that the police are becoming more and more militarized.
I try to get people to understand that local police, a lot of people don't know this, but they're controlled by the local city council. Right? The city council passes ordinances, and the city council directs the chief of police on to what crimes are they going to go after. So getting people to realize that they do have more control and putting pressure on the city council to get the police to stop going after victimless crimes or stop prosecuting potential crimes. That's what we have to do, I think, in the short term. Now, as far as the long term, talking about private police forces, that definitely is an option. I think they're testing that out in Detroit. Is that correct? A couple neighborhoods there have hired private security.
Yeah, Dale Brown is actually the owner of one of those companies. I'd like to have him on my show sometime. I'll probably try to do that soon. But yeah, you're right. Detroit has, and LA has actually tried it. And actually, there's another city, I can't remember where it was. But there's a couple of places who tried it, and it is successful. They get there quicker than the police. They are more responsive. They have to answer directly to the consumer. And not only that, whenever somebody buys services from them, they also give a family who's less fortunate free services as well. So Dale Brown tries to reach out to the whole community. It's really great.
Yeah, that's awesome. And see, we need more positive examples like that to say,
hey, look at this example that's going on right now in Detroit, and look at the results. And then using those examples will convince people, like, hey, well, maybe this is something that we should look at in our community, if they're dealing with tough crime-ridden areas or something like that.
Yep. So one of our commenters in the YouTube channel says Washington is a union law state. So basically what that makes it is state workers can steal money from taxpayers by getting legislators to do things for their unions. And of course that means they're going to always fund specific candidates, typically Democrats. And that makes things really hard for libertarians.
Yeah, that's totally right, and I'm definitely against that.
So, what would you do to remedy it? I mean, would you, ban unions in government jobs?
That's a really good question. As far as banning unions, I don't like to ban anything. Right? People should be allowed to form unions themselves, but they should also be allowed to opt out of the union. The government should be allowed to contract with non-union, companies, and we should have competitions, basically what we should have. But here in Washington State, the way that the Department of Transportation is set up is that they have all these guys that work at the Department of Transportation basically designing the roadway projects and bridges, and they waste a ton of money doing it. They spent like $300 million on the new Columbia Bridge plan, and then found out that the bridge was going to be too short towards the water to where the ships couldn't get underneath it. So they had to scrap those plans and redo it, spend a couple $100 million more on it. And then, they contract it out, but yet they contract it out to these companies that they have to employ union workers. Union wages, prevailing wage, and that they're just wasting tons of money on it. Now, as far as funding the candidates, our libertarian candidates have pledged to not accept money from corporations or special interest groups. They're going to be calling out all of the other candidates and incumbents who fill their coffers, the campaign funds, hundreds of thousands of dollars from the unions, from corporations. And it's across the board. It's not just Democrats, it's Republicans too.
Yeah. Well, in both parties, you're going to have certain scratch my back, I'll scratch yours type of thing is going on. I guess to me, the only way that a government-based system could do it, so that this type of thing doesn't happen, is that they would remove any union requirements, and then also have the jobs done by a kind of like a prize-based system, kind of like what they did with the certain rockets that NASA did, where if the private sector companies want to come up with a they basically put up bids, and but you would just have no union requirement and have all of it be done through private companies that are bidding for different projects instead of actually having it be a government-run company like the government-run police or the government-run justice system or things like that. But if you're going to keep it in, if you have to keep it in the government's hands, that seems to be the only way to get out of it, unless you ban unionization. And I forget who it was that said that government cannot be a union-run system because it puts the people at the mercy of the union. There's just no way for them to get around it. Because there's no competition.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, good points, guys. I want to turn this over to Kyra. He has a couple maybe comments or questions that he wants to get over to Michael. Go ahead, buddy.
Well, Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much.
I like to shift things to sort of a more personal, perspective and really gain.
He does this, Michael. You got to watch out for him.
And sort of gain understanding as to sort of the real life, conversations and interactions that we have on a very personal level with our family. I know that you said that your brother's a libertarian. How many other family members would you say are libertarian? Have you sort of brought into libertarianism? And what are those conversations like? Do you still struggle with some of your family members, coming over to the anarch side? And
well, my mom and my stepdad are both teachers. They work for the government. And when I first got into libertarianism, my mom asked me a question: "Why are you trying to get me to lose my job? Right? Why are you trying to fire me?" And I told her, it was a great response, like, "Look, I'm not trying to make you lose your job. I'm just trying to give you the opportunity to start your own school. And then all the complaining you have on all these other teachers that you can't fire because of tenure and so on and so forth, you can fix that and actually run a better system." And she actually has started creating some of her own curriculum and doing some private education stuff now. So it's moving in the right direction. And, my family members on my mom's side and my stepbrothers, they're starting to become more libertarian. My dad's side, not so much. But all of my friends, not all of my friends from high school, but most of my best friends from high school they consider themselves libertarian. And it's pretty much because of Facebook and being able to post stuff to educate people at the same time, send over videos from learnliberty.org. Those are always great. And, the basic just philosophy of liberty video. Have you seen that video? I'm sure you have. Most people have that are libertarian.
Yeah, the 10-minute video with the blue dude. Yeah.
Yeah, they just actually recreated that a few months ago. They redid it, and it's a hand drawing, but it's all narrated out, so it's a really good video. We've got that up on our website, lpwa.org. You can see. But we've been using that video, and it seems to work pretty well.
Yeah, Kyron, you're still muted up, buddy. I know you're trying to talk.
I see the link for that, and I actually just got it. Oops, I actually have it playing right now.
I can hear it.
Yeah, I didn't mean to do that. No, I pulled up the link. So yeah, great. Thank you for that. I love that video, but I feel like most people have serious ADHD. I'm really talking about myself. So it's something I would just play in the background and let go while I make Facebook comments and listen to it. Which I will sit and watch this entire video because I love the original. So thank you for that. I didn't even know they made a new one.
So we're thinking about doing some new things to spread the message of liberty. One thing is home meetings. We're thinking about starting those, and I'm also putting on workshops that are completely free for libertarian activists as well. A lot of people just don't have the courage or the confidence in themselves to go out and speak to people on this stuff.
because they're afraid, what if I get in an argument? What if they don't like what I say? And then they'll get rejected. And we just have to get people to understand that, hey, we have to have these conversations because we have people in our neighborhoods that are voting for tyrants to oppress us, to turn around and vote in laws to oppress us. And we got to get people to realize, like, look, we've got to stop this. And the only way is to educate our neighbors, right? That's the only way. And it's not necessarily has to go through the political process. Let me tell you, if everyone stops complying, right, we can change society that way, because a law is just words on paper. That's it. And if we educate enough of the police force to stop enforcing bad laws, we can actually win in other ways. So, hope that helps out.
Well, I wanted to ask Kyron if that. Yeah, I just wanted to ask Kyron if he thought, did that answer your question from earlier about his family? I'm really glad to hear your mom taking that great advice that you gave her about, hey, you want more control over your environment at the school, but you have little. This would actually improve your life over here. See, it sounds like short-term gain bad, but really it could be short-term and long-term gain good. That's what liberty is all about, right? It's allowing you to go seek out your own life and make your own choices, peaceful decisions, and to not be infringed upon, right? So, it's good to see you having that success with your own family. I really do. I applaud you. No, let me finish real quick. I just want to also say, there's the side of me also where, we're up against this propaganda machine, and you're talking about educating our peers and loved ones and neighbors and coworkers, etc. And one of the hard things about this is that, the system steals the money from us, and then they pay professionals to go out there and propagandize, right? Whereas with us, we don't have the ability to go steal from others. We don't have an organized central collective like their system does, and so and there is much more. It's less emotional fluff than the statist system is. We actually want to get down to verifiable facts and reason and logic, and it usually takes. It's a harder sell, right, to make a logical sell than an emotional sell. And I've been in sales for years, and I can tell you that much right now. You want to sell off of emotions. You use logic, and you don't want to. You say non-factual things, but the key to a sale is really finding that person's niche and then hitting that emotion, and that's what it's all about, right? That's how you build value. And so we're up against this huge system that has this huge amount of stolen money that they use to propagandize against us, hire these professionals. And so I think it's really important to point that out to people who might be on the fence still. Who are like, I'm trying to listen to both sides. Well, this other side has been completely biased economically and professionally, if you want to call it that. They do hire some very good linguistic people with their millions of dollars they steal from us to propagandize, and they do have a central system, whereas libertarians are spread out and decentralized, so it's not as easy to see a figurehead. So, I just think it's really important to the people who might be demoralized to realize there's actually quite a few more libertarians than you realize out there. Just because there's no one figurehead doesn't mean that the message of freedom is dead. So, sorry, Cameron, I wanted to let you get you a chance to finish up what you were saying. Sorry about that.
So when you brought up the point about your moms, I think that most of us have family members that are government employees. I mean, considering that it's it's the largest sort of employer, I believe, in this country. Not that I necessarily believe in countries, but that's a whole other conversation. And so that I think that's the hard selling point, is saying, hey, look, you're trying to get me fired, you're trying to mess up my way of life, because if I start talking this stuff on my Facebook, on my Twitter, even though I agree with you, I can get fired. And so, I thought you had a great point with your mom, and I say this to all my family members who are teachers and government employees. I say that, hey, look, this is an opportunity for you to possibly start your own school. And the example that I often think of is one named Marva Collins. I don't know if you ever heard of her story. But Marva Collins was a mother in Chicago. She felt like her children weren't getting, the proper education they needed. She started a school in her home. And just the upstairs, they were renting out to a family, and she said, I'm going to start the school here. I'm going to teach, my children here. And other families started sending their kids to her school. And now she has her own private school, and she sent, so many kids from the inner city to college. Not that I think college is where you should be sending your kids, but that's a whole nother conversation.
Yeah, I didn't set a day set a foot on a college campus just to do outreach. That's the only time I'm in college.
I knock on college, and I think it's a big money scam right now. But I do want to add this. And this is because FAFSA has such a big hand on it, which has increased prices. There's a lot of external, what they call negative externalities that go into the pricing and the structure of so-called, advanced education today. But I do want to say, in a free society, the education you would be receiving would be much more niched and narrowed down to specific specialization and division of labor and things that are actually needed. I think there's a lot of fluff in college today that FAFSA just over subsidizes that wouldn't be there, that also tags on and pulls down and maybe even creates what's called negative marginal utility from a college perspective, right? But I think that in a free society, that advancing your education, it sometimes comes across just to people who might hear us for the first time that we're anti-education. So I just wanted to clarify, we are pro-knowledge. You know what I'm saying? We're very pro-knowledge. We're just anti the FAFSA system, the subsidies that come into the system, the amount of corporate welfare and tax loopholes and special abilities that some of these large universities get, form of corporatism really, that wouldn't be available to them in a free market. So I just think it's kind of important to point that out, and I'll get out of your guys' way now.
I think you're absolutely right, Mike, and I don't want to come off as some Luddite that thinks that people need to go back to sort of some very arcane way of thinking. Like I'm all about education, I'm all about knowledge, but I am not about the indoctrination that I know takes place on college campuses because I went to a college campus and several of them actually, and a lot of it is just pure indoctrination. So you have to be well aware of what you're stepping into if you're going to go into the college arena. And if you're going to, I would say do something very specialized that's going to gain you much money because there's no point in going to college and paying and getting $140,000 worth of debt in order to get $35,000 a year, which the government's going to take half of it from you through inflation, taxation, etc.
Yeah. I'm with you, brother. Hey, listen here, man. I got a question for you, Michael. Let's talk about what you're really focused on, as far as subjects and topics that you try to bring up to other people. Because if we're going to be proselytizing like this, there's got to be some type of a backbone that you're going off of. So, what are some of the pitches that you give to people that you are and items and issues and topics that you're really focusing on right now? That you think more people need to hear about and that you're trying to spread with not only the LP but your own self?
So my main focus right now is on training activists with personal development, motivation, things like that. That's where my real focus is. All this other information about issue-based information, it's already out there, right? What we need is a motivated, educated activist base that are taking action, right? Knocking on doors, going to colleges, passing out information, talking to other people. That's what we really need, right? Because we haven't had that in the past. I go knocking on doors, and a lot of the times, we'll talk to 20, 30 people, and none of them will know what a libertarian is. They've never heard of the Libertarian Party. They've never heard of the libertarian philosophy. And that's what we have to get out there,
So what do you say to them though when when they open the door? What's the first thing out of your mouth? And usually, what are some of the topics you focus on?
So we have I created a rack card. It's a marketing piece, and it explains what the word libertarian is. Libertarians believe in liberty. It defines liberty. Right? Liberty is the absence of control or oppression over our lives, as long as we're not infringing on the rights of another person. Right? We define justice. Basically, we're going over the basics and the foundation of libertarianism with them. As long as you're not hurting anyone else, stealing from anyone else, or committing fraud, you should be able to do whatever you choose to do, right? And I think that's what, once someone has that understanding, right, they can run any issue through that filter and see if it's something that's pro-liberty or anti-liberty, right?
No, that answered my question. Kyron, did you have something to add up about the approach for conversation, a PDF file?
Yeah, so, I hear that, And I do believe that one of the best ways to, proselytize the masses, if you will, about libertarianism, about liberty, is to have direct conversations with people. What is sort of the topic or the segue that you find most effective about getting people to really understand what liberty is? Do you go for taxes directly? And then also, too, I heard you mention that you have a printout. Maybe is there a PDF of that can be put in the link so that we can link it in and have people be able to download it and print them out and put them in places that people might be able to read them, like laundromats or schools or whatever.
Yeah, it's currently based for the Libertarian Party of Washington, but I could change it around to any state, or we could just make it neutral, where it's not even Libertarian Party, but just libertarianism. We can do that as well. And then as far as what issues do I lead with, I ask them the question, what are you most interested in? And then that's going to get them talking about the issue that they care about the most, right? And then sometimes, it just depends on where they stand on whatever issue it is. Sometimes it's a pro-liberty position, sometimes it's anti-liberty, but at least the conversation gets started and we can talk about, our solutions. For example, take education, for example. Well, how are you going to fix the education system? I bring up a voucher system, right? Moving it in the right direction, adding competition to the marketplace. Right now, let's say you go into high school and the kid that's 15 years old wants to be a mechanic working on cars, but he has to spend the next 3 years of his life learning all these topics or subjects that aren't going to help him whatsoever. He's wasting his time. Or if we had a voucher system, instead of $10,000 going into the government-run education, the parent would now have a check for $10,000 that they can take to any school they want. What would happen is that the specialty schools would start popping up, right? That are marked. And I know a voucher system is not ideal, but it is a step in the right direction, in my opinion.
All right. Yeah. Go ahead, Robert. Sorry.
So I'm going to push into a more, political centric type of thing, since you're involved with the political realm. I don't know if you've ever considered running for office yourself, but let's just say, for the sake of argument, that you're the governor of Washington, and you pass a you basically pardon all nonviolent drug prisoners.
Yes.
Releasing them all. They are all out there, and in a series of a few crimes, several of these parolees are involved, and they kill people, children. Now, there's this big old movement against you in the media where you're lambasted for having released them, and the crying mother is saying, my children would still be alive if you hadn't let them go. What do you say on when you have your address to the state? You do a state of the state address to respond to this.
Holy cow, man! That is a situation. Wow. I would talk, before I did that, I would talk about, victimless crimes, right? Consensual crimes. Just because someone used a substance doesn't make them a criminal. However, if they steal from someone, if they hurt someone, right? If they hurt children in this situation, then yes, they are a criminal. I would not in any way try to defend the actions of these people, but they shouldn't have been in prison in the first place, right? And this is a man, I would have to do some serious research on how I would approach this. But I totally understand your question. It's a very difficult one, though. Go ahead.
So you'd have to prepare a statement then. You can't come up with
Robert's all about hypotheticals. You'll come to find it's a good question. I love this question because it makes you really think. But I just have to give you that fair warning.
Yeah.
How do you take that response? I mean, what would you do, Robert?
I think that what I would say is I would point at the people who had a similar type of loss due to another criminal that wasn't ever in prison, that wasn't released, and I would bring up all of those examples, and I would say, back in the day, I would look back in time before the prisoners were in there, and I would point at these victims, and I would say, if we had been having the police force out there doing their job, dealing with criminals that are capable of doing this kind of crap, instead of locking up these guys that I just let out, these people's children might have been alive too. So you can say woulda, coulda, shoulda, but the bottom line is that we don't need our police force out there wasting our time trying to deal with people who all they're doing is smoking a plant. So I would point out where the fact that there was incarceration of these people caused policing to not be done efficiently, and that's the reason why I justify, having let them go.
Yeah, fair enough. No, I mean, I think that's a pretty good answer.
Yeah. All right. So then, as far as a conversation that you would have with your, I don't know, typical statist that you're dealing with, you've got a liberal and you've got a conservative. Which one are you going to be able to persuade more effectively, and what is the argument?
So whenever talking to people, I like to find common ground. I was at a community college yesterday, like I said, and one of the janitors there came up to our booth, and he said, well, I'm a socialist. I tried to hand him information. He said, well, I'm a socialist. There's probably nothing that we're gonna agree on. I'm at the opposite spectrum of where you're at. I said, well, do you think we should be over bombing, children in other countries in the Middle East? He said, well, no. So, okay, well, we agree there. What about the war on drugs? Don't you think it's a big waste of time and money and energy? Yeah, I agree with you. So we agree on, find the things that we agree on, and then point out where the current incumbent does not agree with him or us on those issues. There's always issues that we can come to common ground on, and that's what we need to do, because we have to build the relationships with these people before we can convince them of anything.
Hey,
good answer.
Yeah, fair enough. No, that was a really good answer and a great question, Robert. Hey, we got to let you go, Michael. I do appreciate you for being on the show. Before I do let you go, though, I always ask everybody the first time they come on this show this question before I let them off. If you were on your deathbed, so 58 years, or hopefully 50 years from now, or later than that, hopefully never, but we're mortals, right? Anyway, so you're on your deathbed, and ABC, Fox News, Mike Shanklin's Voluntary Virtues, everybody runs up to you with microphones, and the whole world's going to hear you for the next 1 minute. What would you say to the world?
What would I say to the world? Wow.
To the individuals of the world. Let me be more voluntary specific. Sorry.
That's an interesting question. I would define liberty. I would define liberty and tell people that, hey, liberty is the freedom of oppression and control over our lives as long as we're not hurting anyone else. And we must protect liberty and defend it at all costs. That's what I would say.
Fair enough. No, fair enough. I like that response. I don't have much else to add to that. I want to make sure you get a chance to make your plugs, your websites, YouTube channels, anything you want to send people to. Go for it.
Yeah, I'm giving away free digital copies of my book, Libertarian Leadership. There's a lot of great strategies on promoting the liberty movement in there. You can get that at libertarianleadership.org. You can sign up for our new newsletter as well. It's written by libertarian candidates and activists giving tips and tricks and strategies for promoting liberty. So libertarianleadership.org.
Good stuff, and I wish you the best of luck. I know we have the same end goal, so I am cheering you on, Michael. And thanks again for being on the show. I'm going to try and have you back on within the next 6 months to give us an update, okay?
Most definitely. I would love that. And thank you guys for the great questions tonight.
Yes, sir. We'll talk to you soon.
Okay, bye-bye.
Say bye, guys.
Bye-bye.
Good stuff. Now, Michael Pickens is a very good guest. I'm glad we had him on here because it is interesting. I had to get some libertarian that was inside the political parties. I've had other people, actually complaining to me that I haven't reached out to enough people in the political campaign just to talk to them, just to have the conversation with them. Not that I have to agree on the strategy, but obviously we have the same end goals and we have many of the same strategies, just on one issue that we actually disagree on. That's political action. But I am glad that we could get his philosophical take as well, which is basically in line with us. He understands the Rothbardian subjectivist and objectivist anarcho-capitalist positions. He understands freedom at its base, and I wish him the best of luck on his ventures. So anyway, guys, I want to get your last 2 cents before we head out on Michael. What do you guys think?
I'd say he's a good guy. He's got some good insights. I like the methodology that he is using to bring the message of liberty. The video that he was talking about is astounding. I love that one. I've watched it a few times. Shared it a couple of times, 2 or 3. Oh, and he brings up a good point. I think that in the future, after we have reached a voluntary society, people will be looking back and there will be one name that will be associated with the downfall of government around the world, and that one name will be Zuckerberg. For making Facebook, which enabled everybody to communicate with each other and spread the message of liberty, and that brings about the message. Ron Paul, I'm all on you, they're pale in comparison. It's Zuckerberg who brought down the government.
That's hilarious. I'm loving it. I'm loving it. Kyron, I want to get your last 2 cents. Go ahead.
I think that's a great point. I think that is an amazing point. I do not like the fact that they've started metering your posts and who can see them. But who knows? Who knows? I think that that's an absolute amazing point. I don't think I would have been an anarchist if it hadn't been for Facebook. It's like it's the meme where a woman starts crying and she's like, I came on Facebook to find friends and I ended up an anarchist. And losing all my friends, basically.
Yeah.
But Mike, I thought Michael was great. I love the fact that he brought up Dale Brown out of Detroit. I often cite Dale Brown as one of the guys who offers an alternative to the police, because most people are sort of like, oh, we need police, we have to have police. But Dale Brown offers an amazing option. He's never shot anyone. No one has ever, been hurt or injured by his firm. And it's just, he's offering competition for, this government-run monopoly. I love the fact that he brought him up. The other thing I wanted to talk about, as far as sort of the Libertarian Party is concerned, is that, I feel like you just can't go to full-on anarchism. Some people just aren't ready for full-on anarchism, full-on libertarianism or voluntarism. And so, I think that the Libertarian Party serves a wonderful function. It's the gateway drug to liberty. And I love the fact that, he's decided to take on that burden of trying to at least get people to that point, to say, hey, look, I'm not trying to take, the government completely away from you. Here, take this little, here's some sugar with this vaccine. And libertarianism is a drug.
It's addictive. Definitely addictive, that's for sure.
Rick James would say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Guys,
Rick James would say libertarianism is a hell of a drug.
Yeah, definitely. Guys, we got to head out. I want to thank everybody for checking us out. 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time every single Tuesday night. I also want to thank LMR, LibertyMovementRadio.com, for syndicating us as well. And to everybody who did fill out the comments on LibertyMovementRadio.com over on our YouTube channel as well, we are going to send you out some bumper stickers. So thanks again for that. And make sure you guys subscribe to, like, share, comment on the posts over on Statism is Slavery, Facebook.com/Statism Makes You a Slave. Thank you guys so much for your time. Say goodbye, panelists. We'll talk to you guys soon. Have a great night.